Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we have a really fascinating mission ahead of us.
We definitely do. I'm thrilled to be here to break this down with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you.
Yeah.
Because we are taking a comprehensive look at a document today that could, well, it could quite literally save you hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, easily. Not to mention saving you a massive amount of logistical stress.
Exactly. So we are pulling all our insights today from the Florida Home Renovation Planning Guide.
Right.
And this was put together by Construction Corps. They're a veteran-led design-build firm based right in the Tampa Bay area.
A really specific, highly complex market.
Very complex. And our goal for this deep dive is to decode the exact blueprint for planning a major home renovation. We want to help you avoid those catastrophic budget disasters.
Which happen all the time, unfortunately.
They really do.
Yeah.
And we'll clearly lay out why getting a quote-unquote cheap estimate is actually the most expensive mistake you can possibly make.
It is a profound misstep. And it happens entirely because people underestimate the sheer mechanical and regulatory complexity of modern construction.
Right.
We are dealing with a highly regulated, weather-impacted environment in Florida. The baseline requirements for transforming a property have shifted drastically over the last few years.
So true.
So today, we are going to break down the structural, financial, and chronological realities of what it actually takes to execute a major renovation in this current market.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because you probably already know that ripping open a wall in a, say, a 1970s Florida ranch is going to reveal some surprises.
Definitely.
You know, renovations are tough.
Yeah.
But what this guide reveals is that the baseline costs of simply meeting legal and structural requirements today have fundamentally shifted from even just 3 years ago.
Oh, completely. You aren't just updating a kitchen anymore.
Right. You are retrofitting for climate resilience. And yet the temptation is always to start by making a few phone calls to local contractors, you know, just to get some rough numbers.
Just to see where things stand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe basing your mental budget on what a neighbor paid to redo their house back in 2019. You think, okay, maybe 50 grand, a couple of months, and we are good to go.
The desire to establish a quick baseline is completely understandable.
Yeah.
You want to know if the project is even financially viable before you invest time into it.
Sure.
However, the guide emphasizes the inherent danger in that approach. In complex coastal markets like Tampa Bay, if you do not have comprehensive structural plans,
Right.
if you haven't made highly specific material selections, and if there hasn't been a thorough municipal permit review, those initial numbers you receive from a contractor are not estimates.
What are they?
They are blind guesses, formulated without the data required to actually build the project.
And building on that, those blind guesses set the stage for total project failure. Because if a contractor is giving you a number without engineering, without a defined scope and structural plans, they're essentially guessing what is behind your drywall.
And under your foundation.
Exactly. Without locking those elements in, you are guaranteeing mid-project redesigns, massive change orders, and schedule delays that can drag on for months.
Months and months.
Major renovations have to begin with forensic-level planning, not with off-the-cuff pricing.
What's fascinating here is the cascading effect of skipping that planning phase.
Tell me about it.
When a contractor gives a low initial number just to win the job, they're usually leaving out the mandatory structural upgrades that the city will eventually demand once the permit application is filed.
Sneaky.
Well, once the city rejects that initial unengineered plan, the homeowner is suddenly hit with the true cost of the project. But this happens long after they've committed emotionally and financially.
Which brings us directly into the reality of the sticker shock in the current market, because the numbers laid out in this guide for the Tampa Bay area are substantial.
They are eye-opening.
We really need to share them to ground this conversation. According to the source, if you are looking at a comprehensive kitchen remodel today, the range is typically $60,000 to $150,000 or more.
Just for the kitchen.
Just the kitchen. A full home renovation runs $150,000 to over $400,000.
Wow.
And when you move into structural remodels, actually changing the footprint or the load-bearing layout, you're hitting $200,000 to $500,000 plus.
Yeah.
And for luxury builds or major additions, you need to budget $300 to over $500 per square foot.
The immediate reaction for anyone hearing those figures is often to assume widespread price gouging.
Oh, of course. Contractor greed. Right now.
Exactly. But the text unpacks a much more complex reality. These costs represent a perfect storm of systemic macroeconomic changes over the past decade.
It's not just one thing.
No. The Tampa Bay construction market is absorbing the impact of severe skilled labor shortages, the skyrocketing cost of commercial liability, and builders' risk insurance.
That's a huge one.
Her relentless and necessary building code updates, strict hurricane structural requirements, and an incredibly volatile supply chain for specialized building materials.
I want to focus on that insurance piece for a second, because the guide highlights how that dictates construction choices. We all know Florida homeowners insurance has become a crisis,
A massive crisis.
but it impacts the builders just as heavily. Their liability costs have surged, and those costs are inevitably baked into the square foot price of your renovation.
There's no escaping it.
Furthermore, insurance companies are increasingly demanding that older homes be brought up to current codes.
Like requiring updated roof tie-down.
Yes, or full electrical panel replacements, just to maintain a policy. So your simple aesthetic remodel is suddenly hijacked by mandatory insurance compliance.
That is a critical mechanism driving these budgets. The baseline cost of simply meeting legal, safety, and insurability requirements before a single piece of decorative tile is purchased has permanently altered the landscape.
It really has.
While the guide notes that not every single project reaches those absolute peak numbers, internalizing these realistic budget parameters early is essential for project viability.
And understanding those numbers at the very beginning prevents you from wasting 6 months of your life on a project that just isn't financially feasible.
Nobody wants that.
There is nothing worse than paying for a beautiful design concept only to discover the structural execution costs 3 times your available capital.
And a significant portion of that execution cost is hidden right behind the drywall, which leads us directly into the regulatory environment governing all of this work.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the trend for the last decade has been the open concept floor plan.
Oh, everybody wants it.
Everyone wants to remove the walls between the kitchen, the dining room, and the living space to create one massive flowing area. But if you attempt to alter the layout of a home in Tampa Bay, you are immediately dealing with the mighty Florida building code.
Florida enforces some of the absolute strictest, most rigorous building codes in the entire United States. And coastal regions like Tampa Bay are under the heaviest scrutiny.
Makes sense with the weather.
Absolutely. The guide emphasizes that major renovations almost always trigger a cascade of mandatory compliance. We are talking about mandatory structural engineering, wind load compliance, necessary electrical system modernization, plumbing upgrades, and incredibly strict energy code compliance.
It's a lot.
It is. Engineering in this context isn't an optional upgrade for peace of mind. It is the fundamental legal requirement to get your permit approved.
The document specifically details the engineering mandates you must satisfy. A major renovation requires structural calculations, load path verification, foundation valuation, and roof tie-in design.
Right.
And I think we need to break down what load path verification actually means in a practical sense.
That's a great idea.
When a Category 4 hurricane hits your neighborhood, the wind isn't just pushing horizontally against your siding. The aerodynamic forces are actually creating massive uplift, literally trying to physically rip the roof off the structure.
The continuous load path is the only thing preventing that catastrophic failure.
Explain that a bit more.
Engineering a continuous load path means designing a reinforced, unbroken physical connection from the roof trusses down through the vertical walls and securely anchored deep into the concrete foundation.
Unbroken is the key word there.
Exactly. So when you decide to remove a seemingly innocuous wall to create that open concept kitchen, you might be severing a critical segment of that load path.
And the city inspectors know this. They aren't going to let you just throw up a standard wooden beam and call it a day.
And that chance.
You have to prove, with stamped engineering drawings, that the new steel I-beam or structural header you are installing can transfer that extreme wind load down to the foundation just as effectively as the wall you removed. Sometimes that means cutting into the concrete slab and pouring new reinforced footings just to support the new beam. Suddenly, your wall removal involves jackhammers and concrete trucks.
Which perfectly illustrates why cheap estimates are a myth.
Right.
If a contractor quotes you for removing a wall without factoring in the engineering, the steel beam, the specialized hardware, and the foundation work, their quote is useless.
It's worse than useless, it's misleading.
Precisely. Furthermore, the guide mentions energy code compliance, which operates similarly. If you open up more than a certain percentage of a wall or change the glazing on your windows, the building code may require you to bring that entire section of the house up to modern insulation R values and impact resistance standards.
So understanding that you are facing a mountain of mandatory engineering and substantial costs, how do you actually build a team capable of executing this?
That is the big question.
The source breaks down two distinct paths for the homeowner: the traditional architect bid method and the design build method.
This is a critical strategic decision. If we examine the traditional architect bid method first, the process is highly compartmentalized.
Very segmented.
Yes. The homeowner hires an architect to design the project. The architect creates the plans in isolation, focusing primarily on aesthetics and spatial flow,
Making it look pretty.
making it look beautiful. Once those plans are finalized and paid for, the homeowner takes those blueprints and puts them out to bid among several different general contractors, usually selecting the one who offers the lowest price.
But if you look at the guide, there is a massive systemic flaw in that approach for complex renovations, because the contractors, the people who actually buy the materials and manage the labor, were not in the room during the design phase.
That's the core issue.
The architect might design something structurally beautiful, but financially impossible to build. You pay tens of thousands of dollars for architectural plans, put them out to bid, and the numbers come back double your available budget.
Why?
Because the architect didn't account for current steel prices or the specific labor costs in Tampa Bay.
And that disconnect is precisely where projects stall or die completely. The homeowner is left with expensive, unbuildable blueprints.
A nightmare scenario.
This is why the guide heavily advocates for the design-build method, which is the operational model construction core utilizes.
Right.
In a design-build firm, the builder, the architectural designer, and the structural engineer operate under a single roof. They are a unified entity collaborating from day one of the concept phase.
Which means real-world construction pricing is baked into the design process from the very beginning. Budgets and structural feasibility are being evaluated concurrently with the aesthetics.
It's all happening at once.
If you suggest a massive vaulted ceiling, the builder and the engineer can immediately calculate the structural requirements and tell you exactly how that impacts your budget.
Immediate feedback.
Yes. If it pushes the project out of your financial comfort zone, the designer can immediately pivot to a more cost-effective solution before any engineering is finalized or permits are filed.
This unified approach provides incredible value because it allows for real-time value engineering. It eliminates the adversarial relationship that often develops between an architect protecting their vision and a builder trying to manage costs.
That makes total sense.
The design-build model inherently produces far more predictable financial outcomes and significantly tighter project timelines, because the team transitioning the project from paper to reality is the exact same team that conceptualized it.
So whether you are leaning towards a traditional approach or a unified design-build firm, how do you actually vet the people doing the work?
It's crucial.
The instinct for many homeowners is still to just look at the bottom line of the proposal. But the source is adamant that choosing a contractor based solely on the cheapest proposal is a recipe for disaster.
It is the single highest risk decision a homeowner can make. Instead of fixating on an unverified bottom line, the guide instructs homeowners to evaluate the firm based on a comprehensive set of criteria.
Such as
Their documented experience with complex structural renovations in that specific municipality, their internal engineering capabilities, the transparency of their communication process, and the sophistication of their project management systems.
you really have to dig deep.
You are interviewing them for a complex management role, not just buying a commodity off a shelf.
And their licenses are a major part of that evaluation. The guide lists the web of credentials a complex Florida renovation might require, and it goes far beyond just having a basic business license.
Oh, absolutely.
Depending on the scope, you need a certified general contractor, specialized electrical contractors, plumbing contractors, registered structural engineering credentials, and crucially, in a climate like Tampa Bay, mold remediation certification.
Let's delve into that mold remediation aspect because it highlights the unique challenges of the Florida environment.
It's so humid down there.
Exactly. In a humid coastal climate, the moment you open up walls in a home built 30 or 40 years ago, there is a very high probability you will encounter hidden moisture damage or mold.
It's almost guaranteed.
If your contractor does not hold the specific credentials to legally and safely remediate that hazard, the entire project must halt. They have to bring in outside specialists, which triggers immediate delays and uncontrolled cost overruns.
And there's a massive liability risk for you as the property owner if your general contractor decides to just quietly hire unlicensed subcontractors to handle electrical or plumbing work to save money.
It happens more than you think.
If an unlicensed sub installs wiring that fails code inspection, or worse, causes a fire, your insurance company can completely deny the claim because the work was performed illegally. Working with a team that lacks the appropriate licenses for every phase of the work puts your entire financial investment at severe risk.
The source makes a point to note that Construction Corps holds this entire suite of credentials in-house.
That's impressive.
They are a certified general contractor, a registered engineering firm, an electrical contractor, a plumbing contractor, and they hold the certifications for mold remediation.
A one-stop shop.
That is the level of comprehensive, overlapping qualification required to safely alter the structural integrity of a home in a high-velocity hurricane zone.
You essentially need a team that possesses the legal and technical authority to handle absolutely everything the house throws at them once the demolition begins.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the part of the deep dive that requires a serious reality check. The timeline.
Everyone's favorite topic.
The ink is dry on the contract, and you are ready. You want the demolition crew there tomorrow morning. But attempting to rush the planning phase is the quickest way to hemorrhage money.
The text is unambiguous on this point. Attempting to bypass comprehensive planning almost guarantees catastrophic delays and massive financial penalties later in the execution phase.
You just can't skip it.
You can't. The guide lays out a very realistic, sobering timeline expectation for a major renovation, and it requires significant patience from the homeowner.
Let's walk through those hard numbers so you know exactly what to expect. For the initial planning and design phase alone, just figuring out what you are doing and selecting the materials, you should expect 4 to 12 weeks.
Right.
Then, for the engineering phase and waiting for the permits to clear the municipal review boards, you need to add another 4 to 10 weeks.
And the municipal permit backlog alone can consume a massive portion of that time.
They're just so backed up.
City planning departments are rigorously reviewing your structural calculations to ensure public safety. So you are looking at a scenario where it could take up to 5 or 6 months of intense, behind-the-scenes work before a single piece of drywall is removed from your home.
Wow, half a year before demolition.
Exactly. And then the actual physical construction phase typically requires 3 to 9 months, highly dependent on the scope. For extensive structural additions, it can push even longer.
Knowing that timeline helps frame the core budgeting mistakes this guide warns about. The most common traps are starting the design without a firm grasp of local construction costs, drastically underestimated the required structural engineering, ignoring the strict permitting constraints of the municipality, and assuming that a renovation today will reflect the pricing environment of 2018.
To insulate yourself from those exact pitfalls, the source provides a non-negotiable directive for budgeting. You must always, without exception, include a contingency budget of 10 to 15% for complex renovation projects.
And that isn't a slush fund for upgrading your appliances at the last minute.
Not at all.
That is capital you set aside and pretend does not exist.
This raises an important point about the nature of existing structures.
Yeah.
You have to assume that when you dismantle the walls of a home, especially one that has weathered decades of Florida climate, you are going to uncover anomalies.
Unpleasant ones.
Yes. You will find hidden water intrusion, termite damage, or outdated wiring that the municipal code inspector will legally force you to replace once the wall is open.
You have no choice.
That 10 to 15% contingency is your financial armor. It protects you from having the project derailed or left unfinished due to mandatory, unforeseen compliance work.
So to summarize our mission today and the core takeaway from this guide, a successful renovation comes down to methodical, borderline obsessive planning. It requires selecting a highly collaborative, multidisciplinary team from day one, like a design-build firm, so that your architectural vision never outpaces your financial reality.
That's the goal.
And above all, it demands a profound respect for the heavy, mandatory engineering required to build safely in a state like Florida.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, a major home renovation is not merely an aesthetic refresh. It is one of the most significant financial and structural investments you will ever undertake, often rivaling the initial purchase of the property.
Easily.
Approaching it with a strategic engineering-first mindset ensures that the finished result delivers durable, generational value rather than just a superficial cosmetic update.
It really shifts the paradigm of how you evaluate the walls around you. And I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over today.
I'm ready for it.
We've spent this deep dive exploring how increasingly strict codes, Severe weather and skyrocketing insurance are dictating the baseline costs and the necessary engineering of our homes right now, but projects those trends forward.
Okay.
If environmental factors and climate resilience are already the primary drivers of construction standards today, how might future climate shifts fundamentally change the way we conceptualize a home renovation 20 years from now?
That is a fascinating question.
Will the beautiful aesthetic kitchen remodel eventually become completely secondary to what we might call a survival and fortification remodel? Will the primary metric for a successful renovation no longer be the flow of the open concept, but rather the structure's ability to act as an impenetrable fortress against the elements?
It really makes you think about priorities.
It's something to ponder as you look around your own living room. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.